cents, Black woman 61 cents, Native American woman 58 cents, Latino woman 53 cents, and there's no about white woman, which is interesting. But
Don't matter, apparently.
no, but overall, I feel like it might be because like
One of the
merit.
questions though,
Or
wait, with that study, did that say what jobs they were working, or it's just jobs in general?
it just says jobs in general. But
Right. So
I
there
was
you
going
go.
to mention that as well. Like for example, women they tend to go for like accounting or finance, whereas men usually they go more into like engineering or IT. So you can never really compare. This is a conversation between friends.
None of what is said here should be taken as legal advice.
We are not experts in any way.
Take what resonates and leave the rest.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Another episode. It's been a little while since the last one. We missed the Saturday episode, but we had some stuff to do. We were having a little bit of fun, a little too much drinking. But you know, to each their own. Everybody's got to have a nice day off. So, right, we're not doing any more intros, so let's just jump right into the topics. In foundation, we have feminism. So this is going to be a little interesting, possibly controversial again. And on the fitness, we have cheat days / meals. And no finance for today. We're going to skip that one off and leave it for the next episode. All right, starting off with the foundation of feminism. So,
So where do we begin? Where
I would say, okay, so today as feminism exists, do you think it's...
well, let's start with basics. What is feminism?
So essentially it's just promoting, well, it's equality between the sexes, right? That's basically like, that's the foundation of what feminism is supposed to be. Making sure that men and women are supposedly equal in all regards, whether that be in terms of work, whether that be in terms of civil liberties, rights, in terms of like the way they get paid, like, you know, in terms of a job and things like that. It's basically equality across the board.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like my basic understanding. What about you?
Yeah, well, whenever I think about feminism, I always feel like it's, in a way, about like equality, but like just giving more power to women than they had like in previous generations. So that's usually what comes to mind when I first think about feminism, or just like them working towards a different world, like in a world that you know who controls like the policies or like the laws or everything is not just men but also women. And then you can also talk about like the extreme feminism, who literally like they want to get rid of like the system that was implicated by men. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. But I'm here on Google, so there's actually three traditions or three divisions of feminism. So we have the liberals, the reformists, and the mainstream feminism. So we got the radical feminisms and the social Marxist feminisms, sometimes known as the big three. So like anything, there's always going to be like a spectrum, like from the but the very liberal, the very flexible, to the more extreme who really wants to see like a change like completely. There's always going to be, in any case, like any topic that we talk about, there's always going to be that spectrum,
So that gets to the point that I wanted to speak to, the farther end of the spectrum, like the radical feminists, right? So to some point, like their aim or their goal is basically to just completely reverse the whole system, right? So I can't really speak to what a radical feminist would say in this regard, but from what I gather and from like outside perspective, what you see is that what these women want, or they don't even have to be women, they don't even have to identify as women, they consider themselves to be feminists, right? It could be men, women, sex you prefer
Right.
to be.
It's not really like an identity. I feel like it's more like a cause. Like the same way that you have like a cause for like equal rights
Right.
or
So that's the point, right? So like the whole thing is like to split the dynamic. So for so long, men and what's called the patriarchy, to kind of balance it out. So men in the patriarchy have been, from the history that we've recorded, been the ones in charge, have been the ones on top. They're the ones that have been writing the rules, saying what's fair, what's not fair, and implementing systems that provide them with advantages. Not necessarily over women, but just, well, I mean, yeah, maybe they can argue that it's advantages over women, but basically just advantages for men in general.
Mhm.
So what they want to do is basically flip that. If men were on top for so long, now they want women to be on top and do a similar thing, right? So women get to do and say and write the rules that benefit them more as opposed to men. And that's where the radical feminists end up coming to a crossroads, right? Because at the end of the day, this planet is divided in two. It's not just predominantly women. You're going to find 50-50%, right? 50 men, 50 women. You could say there's more women than men, but at the end of the day, we're basically half-half. So you can't just go out of your way, especially in a day of today with the technology and the information that we have available, to go out of your way to try to just like literally dominate the opposite sex. So to that end, that's the problem that radical feminists face. But let me ask you a question. Do you think feminism has, like just on a standard basis of equality, do you think feminism has achieved what it was set out to achieve, at least here in America?
I think yeah, in some aspects of it, not like fully, but I feel like their ideologies and like the goals that they and maybe how it became changed throughout times. Because if you look back on what like 50 or 60 years ago, like the main goal was the right for both, like for women to like get similar equal rights as a man, right to vote, be able to go to school, be able to like get a job, and like with the similar pay. But even today, we see that the pay is not yet the same for women or for women and men. They can be performing the same job, and they still get compensated differently. And
It's different somewhat, but I feel like nowadays it's more balanced out. So like one of the arguments that feminists would make is that there's a gender pay gap,
mhm,
and there's been studies and trials and everything really just to support the argument that that's not really necessarily the case. What women have a tendency of doing is picking jobs that are not as strenuous or not as stressful as what the jobs men do. And
mhm,
if you were to take the same job, these people are working the same exact job, the same exact position, you're usually going to find that they tend to get paid the same, but it's just the amount of hours that they work is different. So men have a tendency of working more hours, overtime hours, and then you don't really have to face something like maternity leave, even though now that's being paid for, right? Um, Maybe you can make the argument there that there's a period of time where women can't work because they're pregnant with a child, and that's one of the reasons why men have a tendency about working women, because during that period of time where women aren't working, the men are still working. Now,
so
again,
you would
that's not
say
true across the
that
board, but
so you would say pay nowadays is mainly based on merit in
for
like
the most part, if they're working the same exact job,
mhm,
obviously, there can be discrimination across the board. Just like people, you can't control everybody, right? If your boss decides that he actually likes men more than women and he's going to pay you differently because of it,
mhm.
well, that's just an asshole, right? That's the guy that's just an asshole. There's not really much that we can do besides just try to report that guy and get some sort of justice for that. But if everything is the same, then yeah,
Mhm.
men and women usually get paid the same now.
Right. So I have a picture right here about like the gender pay gap. For example, if we look into not just the genders but also the um, the ethnicity of a person, Asian woman makes 85 cents for each dollar that Asian man makes. women overall, they make 80 cents per dollar that the man makes. So if a man makes $1, she makes 80 cents. Hispanics, they make 77 cents. Black woman, 61 cents. Native American woman, 58 cents. Latina woman, 53 cents. And there's no upper white woman, which is interesting.
Don't
But
matter, apparently.
no, but overall, I feel like, yeah, it might be because like
One of the
merit,
questions though,
or
wait, with that study, did that say what jobs they were working, or it's just jobs in general?
it just says jobs in general. But
Right. So
you
there you
also
go.
have to mention that as well. Like for example, women, they tend to go for like accounting or finance, whereas men usually they go more into like engineering or IT. So
Yeah.
you can never really compare like the difference that they make if there's less women represented, like for example in tech fields.
Usually
So
tech jobs pay more, right?
exactly. So even if there's less women on that field, it's always going to be the balance there that that you cannot compare to somebody who is in a different field who paid less. So to an extent, I feel like things are changing. Things are becoming a little bit more liberal in a sense, but also like the policies that advocate for women rights and just like the equality. But at the same time, equality is just it's too broad, man. In my opinion, it's like a concept that it doesn't really bring justice to like the country or to like society overall. Because equality, oh, okay, so this comes down to the question whether equality versus equity. So which one would you prefer?
Right. So equality is like equal opportunity, and then equity is equal outcome, right? And right there, that becomes a problem. Equity becomes a problem because it doesn't matter how hard you work. At the end of the day, you'll end with the same result as somebody that put in half as much effort. So usually, hold on.
All right. So going back to like equality versus equity. So you mentioned that equity becomes a problem. Why?
Right, equity is a problem because it doesn't really matter how hard, like hypothetically between us, right? Let's say I put in wherever the job is, I put in 20 hours this week, and you put in 40 or 50. At the end of the day, we still get the same paycheck. You want to know why? Because it's equity. It's equal outcome. But in terms of actually getting the job, right? Because let's say it's a good paying job between the two of us, we should have the opportunity based off the merits that we, show up with, that, we get a chance to have that job. So that's in part and parcel where, you're going to find a problem with feminism, especially radical feminism, because what they're promoting is equity and not equality. What they want is equal outcome and not equal opportunity.
Right, but you can just flip the script a little bit. Rather than getting the equal output, you can be getting the equal opportunities. Well, no equal opportunities. Opportunities that you are needed to compete or be more competitive in the market or like in society overall, right? For example, when it comes to equality, it gives you that same it's going to give you the same resources to, let's say, you and I, all right, equals resources. Actually, we're very similar in that sense. Okay,
no, but let's say hypothetically somebody that comes from a really poor country, right?
Exactly.
And like they can only go to Harvard if they get like a scholarship. Well, hypothetically, let's say that, in terms of the schooling system that they have over there, you have a good background in terms of the education that you had here, as opposed to somebody that's coming from like Africa. Equity would mean, or rather equality would mean that despite the differences in culture where you were raised, you still get an equal opportunity to go into Harvard based off the merits that you present, right? So, continue.
Whereas equity will mean that more resources are going to be allocated to that person who is coming from a different country with a different, like a more hard background or like poorer background than the person who grew up all the time here and pretty much knows the English, the language perfectly, but just don't put the work to go into Harvard. Whereas the other person had shown interest into going to Harvard but more resources are allocated to that person. For example, when it comes to financial aid, so more money is given to that person, or more opportunities is given to that person. Do you think that's fair?
To the person that has less, they're giving more resources, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
I would say so.
Okay, but now the question the question comes down to like, what about the middle class? Like the
No, I
middle
mean,
class
like,
is,
at the end of the day, like, the argument that should be being made is the merit, right?
mm-hmm.
If both of these people, wherever you're coming from, middle class, lower class, a different country that's like a third world or impoverished country, what we're basing it off of is one, merit, and two, desire, right?
Right.
We got to see if you're like, if you have the skills to get to this level. It doesn't even have to be a school, right? Because education, especially nowadays, like, it's universal. Just go online, go on the
Mm-hmm.
internet. You can learn anything. It doesn't matter where you get that education. But in terms of like a job or a profession, like, these things have to be based off of how good you are at doing this thing and how much you want it, right? It shouldn't be based off of because, we have too many men working this job, so we need
Mm-hmm.
women to balance it out. Or we have too many white men working this job, so we need black men in order to balance this out.
Right.
And obviously, that goes more towards race and less about feminism, but that's the point. It has to be based off of merit. It has to be based off desire. Because
Okay,
maybe
so
the guy that's in the middle class doesn't want to go to Harvard, and that's fair.
okay, so look, let's go back to feminism for a second. When you mentioned about the job, there's two candidates, one a man and the other one is the woman.
Mhm.
That company has, let's say, it's a small company, so it has 10 employees. 8 of them are men, 2 of them are women. Now, when these two candidates are like on the interview process, the guy had more experience, and literally it would be like a good asset. But just because he's a guy, the chances for him to get into the job. Actually, let's not even think about like which one is more experienced. Let's say they
No,
both have
let's say same experience,
same
same
experience,
age,
same everything.
men and women, but the
Right.
quota. There's a quota now, right? So what
Mhm.
feminism promotes is a quota in terms of just, again,
Right.
equity across the board with the job. So there should be as
Exactly.
many women in the job as men.
There you go. So just because she's a woman, she has, let's say, 75% more chances to join the team, just because the company needs more women. Do you think that's fair? If you
If they
were the
have
boss.
this, right? If everything was the same, like similar education, same level of experience, there it just becomes an issue of, well, is there a quota?
What all like for them to have like
Yeah, like because nowadays, like, it's being pushed upon that you have to say you have the same number of women employees than men,
mm-hmm.
right? But you can even flip this, right? Because there's some professions or some jobs where the women are outnumbering the men, but there's no quota there, right? It's just get as many women in the job as possible,
Right.
and just get men that have like 20 years of experience and are just basically like the best in the field. Like, an industry that I'm thinking about right now is like dentistry. I can
Mm-hmm.
think of many dental offices where a lot of the employees are women, and the only men employees are basically just the dentists themselves.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, this is always going to be a controversy, and I feel like when it comes to like feminism, taking it to extreme, it's bad. Like anything, like taking it to just one end of the spectrum is really bad. There's should always be like that balance. Yes, historically, we look back in the books, like women were treated like less. They were not given the same
They were
rights.
property. They didn't have rights. They were property.
Exactly. So I guess we are going towards that right path, but then there's no a clear sign. Well, not clear sign, like a clear objective to where it should stop,
And
where or like where it should end. Yeah. So, and I feel like this is not an issue just with feminism. It's with like gender, Well, that is gender. Well, also like for what do you call it? Like background, ethnicity, and even like nationalism, like the countries that you come from. It has a huge impact on this topic,
But
especially
I
in
would
the
say at this point, it's more towards just like literally the genders themselves, right? Because
US.
at the end of the day, like it doesn't matter where you're coming from. It's either you're a part of team women or you're a part of team man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those are the biggest teams that we have, right? It doesn't matter where you come from in terms of the country or ethnicity, whatever. You're either
Right.
with a woman or you're with the men.
Mm-hmm. Which one will you be with?
I would always promote merit and merit. Yeah, I don't care about it being women or men. It has to be based off: is this
I think
person deserving of this opportunity because of what they bring to the table?
true. Well, it is what it is. We will see how this turns out to be later on in the future. See if it progresses or it kind of slowly detains. But no, overall, I mean, I cannot really.
We can't really say too much about the
That's the
female
thing.
perspective, right? We're not
Yeah.
women.
No, and also we're not women, and I lived with women. I grew up with 3 women, so I can see their perspective also like in a bit, but I cannot really judge or like talk about
We can't really speak from that experience because we
exactly.
haven't been women.
We both have men, so we both
At the
have.
end of the day, what we have is just this level of kind of just rationality, right? And
Like,
we're trying to present as much rational thinking and thought to
you
these
know,
concepts
I saw
and ideas.
something actually. Now that you mentioned that, there was like this documentary about like why feminism is bad
Mm.
because just the simple fact that before, yeah, women didn't have too much rights, but they had it easy in a sense. Like for most of the
Well, I
women, they're
wouldn't
responsible.
you know, if the most attractive woman would probably have it easier because, you know, to
True,
usually get the
yes.
best quality guy. But
Mhm.
go on.
But yeah, so I saw the documentary, so it gives you like a different perspective that, feminism in a way is positive, but also has its negative impacts. So it's just there's always the other side of the coin. You know what I'm talking about? So
Yeah, I mean, like one of the other things that feminism is promoting is the fact that
mhm.
women should be focused on their careers and they should be driven to careers as opposed to having family. Like you can have family at any point in your life and it doesn't matter
Right.
because, you know, you should be getting paid as much as men. And when you're focused on raising families, that means you're not earning any money, which means you're not going to be able to compete with men, which means that gender pay gap is still a problem. But you know, like there's something to be said about raising the next generation of humans.
True.
Now we're just like putting them in daycare or having other people raise their children when you don't know who they are and who knows if they have the best interests in mind for them. So, you know, there's a conversation to be had about that.
There's
Where
always it's like the saying that you cannot solve a problems without creating new ones. Like you
yeah,
might be able to solve a problem, but you might not realize that you're creating others in the long term. There's always
exactly.
something to learn from that. But a lot of times you gotta wait and face the problem when it comes.
For sure.
You can
You got to
avoid it,
see how
but
bad it gets before you start actually, you know,
mhm.
focusing on solving this problem. At this point, we're just seeing how bad it can get.
Worst case scenario. Cool. Let's move on to the fitness because it's getting a little bit lengthy. Um, cheat days. Thoughts on that?
Man, they're pretty good, aren't they?
Fucking, we had a cheat day this weekend.
Mostly just with alcohol, but yeah. Cheat days, cheat days, cheat days. So for the most part, they're a problem for a lot of people because
Mhm.
it tends to spiral out of control. But cheat days are very useful, especially if you're on like a strong regimen in terms of training and nutrition. Simply because, believe it or not, refeed day, or rather, cheat days aren't necessarily just like about cheating. They're more about just refeeding.
Right.
So what I mean by that, most people have a tendency of consuming the most healthy things, a lot of vegetables, a lot of lean meats, proteins, good fats, and they tamper down the carbohydrates because that's usually a big source of calories, and where people have a tendency to over-consuming, right? That's basically where you're going to find all the junk food that you consume. It's mostly just sugar and carbohydrates. So cheat days are useful simply because you can have a day where, let's say 6 days out of the week, you're eating super clean and you're exercising regularly.
Mm-hmm.
One day, refeeds are useful because they help replenish glycogen storages. So what I mean by that is your muscles and your liver, they store energy, and this energy is called glycogen. And glycogen is produced by it's the byproduct of your body breaking down carbohydrates. So when that ends up happening, your body refeed or replenishes those storages for whenever you go back into the gym the next time. Or hypothetically speaking, let's say you're gonna do something exerting the following day or within the next couple of days, like you're going on a hiking trip or you're going on or you're doing some sort of work that requires a lot of physical energy and intensity. Your body uses cheat days like that to help replenish the storages. So they're very useful, especially for somebody who's feeling really disciplined with everything else.
What if every day is your cheat day?
But then there you go. That's where you get fat. And that ends up being the problem because you can never find the balance. It's always one bad day after the next bad day, as opposed to having multiple good days in a row and then one bad day every now and then.
Right. No, definitely. I agree with you that cheat days are, I feel like they're essential to the balance that you keep and the discipline that you
100%.
keep. Because you gotta compensate yourself for being like, being consistent and being disciplined about like the whole other week. Whereas maybe, I mean, you can take it like weekly or you can do it like maybe twice a month. Doesn't have to be like weekly specifically and just
Yeah, do bi-weekly. I was
Exactly.
like, once you build that momentum and that rhythm, you're like, man, I really like the way I'm feeling. I really like the way I'm looking. You're not really going to want to take those cheat days, but if you're not going to do cheat days, then you have to do refeed days. And again, that's just over-consuming a little bit, not over-consuming, but consuming more carbohydrates than usual to help
Mhm.
replenish those storages. That way, when you go back into the gym, boom, you have a shit ton of energy and you're ready to tackle it, as opposed to walking into the gym all tired or not really feeling energized to hit the weights or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that covers the topic. That was very
Yeah,
brief. Good.
to the
Compensate
point.
yourself for being consistent.
But you
And
got to be
good
consistent.
for your body.
Don't be doing cheat days back to back just simply because,
That's
I
true.
said that you should replenish your storages. Your storages are already replenished. Go work out and go eat well, and then do that
Mm.
like in 2 weeks.
For sure, for sure. All right. So on the last segment of the week, last segment of the podcast, I have few updates on COVID-19. So there are fewer than 100,000 Americans hospitalized with COVID for the first time in nearly 2 months. So that means progress. Starting this week, the CDC is requiring mask wearing on all public transportations, including planes, subways, taxis, and buses. Okay, so there's progress that we're making regarding the pandemic. There are talks that the economy might be open by end of the summer or so, but there's speculations about that. I think on New York City, actually, inside dining is going to be open on for Valentine's Day, if I'm not mistaken. There were some talks
So
about
they're already no, you're right. Indoor
no,
dining
inside,
is
inside
closed
dining.
still.
Yeah, everything is outside right now. And the government, 10 Senate Republicans announced a counter-proposal to President Biden's 1.29 trillion stimulus package. This one cost about 600 billion. We will hear the details later today, but it's a huge difference going for 1
Half, literally
trillion.
half.
Yep. To no, it's more.
No,
It's
it's
less
more
than
than
half.
half. It's like 40%.
It's less than half
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like 40% of the original
of the
proposal.
original. Yeah, there you go. Cool. There's still controversies behind Robinhood app. Not allowing people to trade. So there were a lot of negative feedback that the app like created on its own.
Based, you know.
Yeah. We have Melvin Capital, the hedge fund that shorted GameStop, reportedly lost 53% in January. So I guess it kind of worked out for was a Wall Street bets. in their gamble.
Everybody that participated in it.
There's drama in the new Google's workers union. There's always drama. Toys R Us. This one is very interesting. Toys R Us. They've been closing their stores for the longest now. They went bankruptcy, and it actually in the weekend it closed its final 2 stores. So there's no more Toys R Us.
That's it. Game over. Damn, they could have just stayed on the stock market just a little bit longer. We could have gotten a blast off by Wall Street bets.
True. Coachella, which was scheduled to take place in April, was canceled again. This one's an interesting one. So Lionel Messi's contract was published by the Spanish paper El Mundo, and it's astonishing that he signed a contract on 2017 with Barcelona for over 674 million over 4 years. That's a lot of money. He's the most paid soccer player out there, which is really insane money. But yeah, so we're looking forward into the week. I will be doing some trades. School is started, so for those that started the semester, good luck to y'all. I feel your pain. We got this. It's snowing in New York City, well, in New York overall, which is beautiful. And global warming is not a hoax.
Well, I mean, I don't know. At this point, the snow is a good thing, actually.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a hoax. A lot of people think it's a hoax.
It goes towards the argument that there isn't no global warming.
There we go. Cool. You got something to add?
No, man. That's it. Everything's looking. We're just waiting to see what's gonna happen. COVID's still a thing. Still got no aliens, which is unfortunate.
So February already, so I would put my hope.
That prediction is just, I don't know, man. I'm still hopeful, but I'm waiting. I think they're just laying in the shadows.
Well, maybe they may be here already.
Or actually, no, they're laying in the sky somewhere behind the clouds.
All right, guys. We'll see you on Wednesday. Peace out. This is.
What the is we?